everyone. Today, we'll be diving into the tragic past of Tsuyuri Kanao, a female demon slayer from the Demon Slayer Corps. Her story touches on a dark part of Japanese history, human trafficking. Let's take a closer look at both her background and this harsh reality from Japan's past.
Yeah, human trafficking actually existed in Japan for a long time. I'll walk you through some of the historical context, so stick around for an in-depth look.
Let's start with Kanao's childhood. She suffered extreme abuse from a young age, which made her shut down emotionally. She couldn't cry or even smile anymore.
Right, and as she recalls, sometimes my siblings just wouldn't wake up the next day. The abuse was so terrible that she shut off all feeling to survive. She even said, "One day, I just heard a pop, and then, nothing hurt anymore." Pretty heartbreaking, huh?
Then, one day, Kanao's parents decided to sell her as merchandise. This was human trafficking, selling people for profit.
It's awful, isn't it? Kanao was even dragged away with a leash, like an animal. Knowing her past really makes her calm. Stoic demeanor hit different, doesn't it?
Actually, human trafficking wasn't unheard of even in ancient Japan. Back in the Nara period, around 677 AD, people started thinking of others as something that could be sold for money.
Yeah, for instance, officials from Shimotsuke province, modern Tochigi prefecture, requested permission from the imperial court to sell farmers' children. Because of poor harvests, the court denied it, thankfully. But the fact they even considered it is unsettling.
It's shocking to think that even back then, people saw others as items to trade. I mean, can you imagine parents selling their own children? Then in 701, a law called the Taihou Code was established to outlaw human trafficking. But despite the ban, illegal trading continued.
In 757, another law, the Euro Code, reinforced the ban. But at that time, there was a social class known as nuhi, basically slaves, who were treated as property.
These nuhi were, in essence, slaves. They were part of inheritances, which meant they were practically bought and sold.
Just knowing that such a system existed shows how, back then, people were treated as things, not humans. History sure has some painful truths.
By the Kamakura to Muromachi periods, a term for human trafficking, hitokai, or human buying, was in common use.
Some people even sold themselves or their families just to survive. And captives from wars were also sold as slaves.
Literature from that time even depicts human trafficking. In Senjusho, a historical tale, people of all ages are shown being sold. There's also a song in Kangenshu, an anthology, that goes, "I'm bound to be sold on a slave ship, so please, boatman, row gently." You can just feel their fear and sadness. During the Warring States period, a practice called randori, capturing people near battlefields and selling them as slaves, became common.
Yeah, the chaos led to things we can hardly imagine today. Some feudal lords, especially in Kyushu, would even capture and sell their own farmers as slaves.
There were also pirates known as wako, who kidnapped coastal villagers to sell as slaves. Back then, nowhere was truly safe.
Just living meant constantly being at risk from wars or pirates. What a terrifying time.
Things got a bit better in the Edo period. Society was more stable, and trafficking was banned. But an official red light district called the Yuukaku still existed, where human trafficking continued in a way.
Ever heard of the Yoshiwara Yuukaku? Although it was technically legal through contracts, many daughters from poor families were forced to work there, often trapped by their family's debt or sold against their will.
Essentially, these young girls were being sold by their families and forced to work, losing their freedom. It's really sad.
I bet a lot of people are interested in learning more about the Yuukaku. I'll leave some links in the description for those who want to explore further.
Now, during the Taisho era, 1912 to 1926. The same period Kanao lived in, this system was still around.
Families in poverty often had no choice but to sell young women or daughters, who then worked under harsh conditions, carrying huge debts they couldn't escape.
The workers in these Yuukaku districts weren't free until their debts were paid. This was, in essence, human trafficking. So even in Kanao's time, this kind of suffering was still happening.
And the debts were so high that most people remained bound for years. When you think about it, it's easy to imagine just how hard Kanao's life must have been.
By the Showa era, people began to strongly criticize human trafficking and the Yuukaku system, which led to stricter laws.
Right. After World War II, in 1946, the occupation forces, GHQ, ordered the abolition of Yuukaku. Then in 1956, Japan finally established the Prostitution Prevention Law, officially banning all human trafficking.
Reflecting on Kanao's Taisho era background, it's clear that the shadow of human trafficking still loomed large.
Luckily, Kanao was taken in and lovingly raised by the Kocho sisters, Kanae and Shinobu. That really saved her, didn't it?
And watching the demon slayers at the Butterfly Mansion fall one by one to demons made her hatred for demons grow. Until she decided to join the Demon Slayer Corps. This was a choice she made from the heart, and meeting Tanjiro later helped her solidify her own sense of will.
Today, we shared Kanao's backstory, along with Japan's history of human trafficking.
If this video taught you something new, please remember to like and subscribe.